Alright, so we've talked a little bit about building an application on Node.js and the different libraries available. Now let's talk a little bit more about Express. So this section's optional, but it's for anyone who wants to get a little bit more details of how to use Express, but it's not required for this course, and you can actually complete the course without these two lectures. So this is just for any added benefit. So what we're going to cover in this lecture are URL parameters and get variables. So there are two ways that Express can actually get data from the client side of an application. So this is our example application that we'll be using in this lesson, and we see here that it's running on localhost 3000, but it does not have a route registered for slash. So let's actually navigate to a specific resource and see what we get. So I'm going to navigate to /name. Here we get a message. We say, hello name, here are your get variables. So what's happening here is that this part of the URL is actually being read by our application and printed back to us right here. So we see it's printing out our get variables. We don't actually have any get variables, so let's actually add some. So let's add get var1 equals value. So there we see we have our get variable, get var1 equals value after our URL, and down here we see that we get our value printed back to us. So we can add another get variable, and we see that get var2 equals value2. We see that down here. So note that this is only because we actually are looking for get var1 and get var2 in our application. So if we try to enter another get variable, we see that it has no effect because our application is only looking for get var1 and get var2. It's not actually looking for not found. Alright, so this is what we're trying to do. Let's now take a look at the example application code. Alright, so this is our example. We have up here our modules that we're using. So we're using Express and we're using Consolidate just to get our templating library. And here we're registering our templating library, registering our router, registering some error handling, which I'll talk about in a minute. So let's take a look at our route. So if we go all the way down to the bottom, we can see we're registering just one route, app.get, and our route is /:name. So the colon here actually has a special meaning in a route that you register with Express. What the colon is saying is take this part of the URL and store it in a variable called name. So any variable captured this way is actually put in the request inside the params object. So if you want to access name, you say request.params to get the params object, which has all the parameters that you captured in the URL, and .name to get the name. You could actually capture multiple parameters in here, so we could have :name / something else / something else. They would all be put in request.params. So now what about get variables? So if we look at the next two lines, this actually shows how to extract get variables in Express. So the get variables are actually put in request.query. So here we're saying we'll accept two get variables, getVar1 and getVar2, and just put them in these local variables. Finally, down here, we render the result using a template that I'll show you in a moment that has name, getVar1, and getVar2. So let's take a quick look at the template. Alright, so this is our template. Here we just say hello, name, and if you remember that was our parameter in the URL. And we just say here are your get variables, and print out all the get variables. So now let's go back to our example. So one thing I want to mention here is that we can still actually specify other get variables, and they'll still be put in request.query, but the only ones we're actually looking at are getVar1 and getVar2, which may actually be undefined. So one thing you could do in this case, if this is what you were looking for, is just check if it's undefined, set it to some default value. You could also iterate the request.query object to see all the get variables that the user said and print them out for debugging purposes. But that's the basic idea behind get variables. Alright, so let's run this and see how it looks. So we have our Express server listening on port 3000. So let's go open that in a browser. So we go to localhost 3000 and we see cannot get slash. So the reason for that is we actually specified :name after the slash. So we want to capture the result after the slash in name, which means we actually have to specify some kind of path. So if we go back up here and do /Sean, say hello Sean, here are your get variables. So notice we didn't actually check if our get variables were undefined, and we just sort of put them in our template. So in this case, since they're undefined, we just see 2 empty bullets. So we can go up here and add our get variables. So it was get var 1, and now we see we have variable 1 set in our template, and we could do the same thing and set get var 2. Alright, so that's how to get variables and URL parameters using Express. So here's the URL parameter, here are the 2 get variables.